I want everyone to think of a time in their life when they unapologetically rejoiced. Just remember and think back to a time when you were so joyful. Some of the times that stick out to me are a lot of memories with my basketball team whenever we get a win. We are always jumping up and down and screaming and laughing and shouting, and we're just so excited and we rejoice. And I just also think about times when there's a loss. We don't have that same rejoicing attitude. I mean, that's what I think of when most people lose. They don't rejoice and are not excited to lose. But when we read Philippians in the Bible, we see that Paul, who wrote Philippians, he is rejoicing even though he's in jail. He's rejoicing during a loss. So I want us to read Philippians 2:12 through 18. Therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God, without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky, as you hold firmly to the word of life. And then I will be able to boast on the day of Christ that I did not run or labor in vain. But even if I am being poured out like a drink offering on the sacrifice and service coming from your faith, I am glad and rejoice with all of you. So you too should be glad and rejoice with me. Wow. Paul is writing this from prison. And he is telling us that we are called to rejoice. And we can rejoice because of Christ. That is Paul's hope when he's in prison, when he is writing to this church, to the people who live in Philippi. We are called to rejoice. And I just think of all of the little things that happen throughout the day that we can be joyful about and we can be thankful for because of all that Christ has done for us. Just little things like watching a sunset, watching birds fly, having a warm cup of coffee early in the morning. That just makes me rejoice. Or maybe it's spending time with a close family member, or laughing with your friends until you're crying. That is like the best ever. Like laughing so hard that you actually cry. That's like a moment of rejoicing that might seem small, but we can be so thankful for that because we are in Christ. We are children of God. And I love Philippians 4:4. I want to read it for you guys. It says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice." It's such a short verse, but it's so profound. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. It's very simple. It just says rejoice, but it's not always easy to do when we go throughout our daily lives. And I think Paul realizes that. So my first point was that we are called to rejoice. And my second point is that complaining does not reflect our relationship with Jesus. Paul encourages the people in his writing to do everything without grumbling or arguing. So if you're going through life and you are not rejoicing, then you are falling into the pattern of this world and you are becoming a part of the warped and crooked generation that does not look to Christ. And when you do that, you are not shining the light of Christ. And I think of the flashlights that we have in my house. We have several of them kind of chilling in different spots, some in the garage, the kitchen, the basement. But whenever we need one the most, the batteries are always dead. Always. Whenever I try to use a flashlight, it never works. And maybe we should take some time to change the batteries in all of them. but without fail, every time I need a flashlight, every time I need some light in a dark spot, the flashlight does not shine. And I think we can be like a broken flashlight when we are complaining during a dark time, when we're grumbling and arguing instead of rejoicing. That's why it's so important that Paul says, do everything without complaining or grumbling. Even things that we feel like we should get to complain about. Like Paul, he was in prison. If anyone had an excuse to be complaining and grumbling, it would be Paul. He was thrown in prison because of his faith. But he said that he is glad, that he rejoices along with us. And my last point is when we rejoice in all things, we shine for Christ. I want to read this part of the verse again. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky, as you hold firmly to the word of life. When we can be rejoicing and thankful because of Jesus, we are shining for him, especially when we are doing so in a time of darkness, when it feels like we should be grumbling and arguing and not rejoicing. Rejoicing feels like the last thing we should be doing. That is when we shine the most, because it's Jesus in us. We can't shine without him. And Paul, he had the joy of Christ in him. That's how he was able to write this letter and to talk about rejoicing to these people while he was in prison. And light shines through the dark every time. Because if you have a flashlight with batteries that work, if you have a flashlight with rejoicing in it, it will shine in the darkness. Because darkness cannot stay where light is. So, we have to train our minds to rejoice when we feel like complaining. I find myself doing this usually many times a day. When I think, I want to complain about the cat food, I have to stop myself big time. I have to say, I'm thankful that I get to eat here. And maybe I think about situations that happen with COVID and I want to grumble and argue and complain about that. And I have to stop myself and be thankful for the life that I have in Christ. And it's all possible through him. So, we are called to rejoice and be thankful for all the little things in our life. Philippians 4:4, rejoice in the Lord always. In the Lord, rejoice. I will say it again, rejoice. That is what this whole sermon is about, in case you didn't tell. So I'll say it again, rejoice. And complaining does not reflect our relationship with Jesus. If we complain in the darkness, then we are becoming a part of the pattern of the world, and we are just like a broken flashlight. And I don't want you guys to be a broken flashlight with dead batteries. So shine the light of Christ and train your mind to rejoice in him in all things.